This week's Torah portion is the second in the book of Genesis. It's Noah, the story of Noah and the ark. So perhaps most of us know the story of Noah. He's considered a righteous man in his generation. God, so to speak, sees that the world is corrupt, that people have resorted to corruption and robbery and thievery, and it's time to destroy the world as a consequence of the way that people are in the world. And Noah and his family and animals that go into the ark, all the animals, all the species will go into the ark and will be saved from the flood that is about to occur. So God tells Noah to build this ark, which he does, exactly as God tells him to. And we learned that it takes him 120 years to build the ark. In all of those 120 years, Noah does not go out and preach to the people, doesn't tell them to change their ways. He just builds the ark. And if anybody comes to him and says, "What are you doing?" he'll tell them, but he didn't go out to actively preach to the people. He also doesn't argue with God. He accepts what God tells him and he builds the ark for 120 years. He's now apparently 600 years old. The rains start to come and he doesn't get in right away. He waits. Is it really going to happen? Perhaps there's this moment where we work for something and we're so invested in something, we believe in something, but when it actually happens, do we take the action that's necessary? And Noah shows us that it, embedded in our humanity perhaps is sometimes this disbelief that's actually happening. I've worked all my 120 years to build this ark, and is it really happening? Is it really now? So yes, it's time to go into the ark. He goes into the ark with all these animals. And as I mentioned, he doesn't preach and he doesn't argue with God. He does exactly what God tells him to do. So he lives in the ark. We learn the waters come down from the heavens. The waters come up from the ground. There's a complete washing away of the world with this ark, and all that is within the ark survives this 40 days and 40 nights of rain from the heavens and waters coming up from the bowels of the earth. And at the end of 40 days, the rain stops. But Noah and the animals don't come out of the ark for another. It takes a whole calendar year for the waters to abate and for Noah to be able and be told to leave the ark. So he's in the ark with these animals, with his family for a whole year. And Noah, we learn, was a very independent person before he went into the ark. And as I said, he did exactly what God told him to do. He saved himself and his family. He was an individual. But when they come out of the ark, they're described as families. They're described as people who are dependent. He's described as someone who went from, "I'll build the ark because God tells me to somebody who spent an entire year tirelessly, day in, day out, taking care of others, taking care of all the animals and all the birds and all the creatures that were in the ark, to feed them and to water them and to clean them and to clean up after them and to do all that is necessary to take care of an ark full of animals for a whole year." He's, through his actions, is giving all the time to these animals. And by the end, it's described that he's much more of a giver and much more of a person filled with kindness than he was before. He went in as an individual, came out as a more dependent family man. He went in as someone who took care of himself to somebody who's taking care of others. And it's noted in our commentaries that there's a little bit like somebody who might be in a room where it's very cold. And there'll be a certain person who would put a coat on. "It's cold in here, I'll put a coat on." Versus somebody who says, "It's cold in here. How do I make the room warmer for other people who are in the room? Can I turn the heat up? Can I light a fire? Can I do something?" Which is other oriented. So Noah starts off, is described in our commentaries as being more self-centered, took care of himself and his family. But by the end, he's somebody who's filled with kindness and filled with the capacity to think about others through the training of taking care of the animals in the ark for a whole year. Which is perhaps part of our journey through life, is we start off as babies who are very egotistical and very self-centered, and we learn how to give and we learn how to share and we learn how to think about other people as we get older. So Noah, we understand, sent out at the beginning to find out if there's dry land. He sends out a raven. So the raven, if anybody's been to the Tower of London, they're very scary birds. They're black and they're loud and they eat carrion, they eat meat, and they're rather intimidating animals. And they represent, in the mystical teachings, they represent gevura, strictness and justice and boundaries and harshness. So he sends out that bird first doesn't find rest. And then the next bird that Noah sent out is a dove. So the dove is white. The dove is peaceful, is a herbivore, is very calm and quiet and loving, and only has one mate, etc. So the dove is a bird that represents for us kindness. So again, seeing through the birds that Noah sends out, he sends out the dove second. He's become that kind person. Then when the dove comes back and hasn't found rest, he brings in the dove, sent it out again a week later, and it comes back. The dove comes back with a olive branch in its mouth, indicating that as much as the dove has formed a relationship with Noah and is grateful for the kindness that Noah has given it over the time of its time in the ark, that there's something very sweet about being free. He brings back an olive which is bitter. So the commentators teach us that the dove is showing Noah that the freedom is a sweeter existence than being cooped up in the ark, even if you end up eating bitter olives, that it's better to be free. And then the third time Noah sends out the dove, it doesn't come back. So Noah now knows it's time to leave, but doesn't leave until God tells him to. And that's when he leaves and he's told to populate the world and repopulate the world and move forward. So I'd like to also suggest that there can be a metaphor of this ark, that the ark is a safe haven. It's a place that you go to. It's a place where when the world is all in chaos around you, when your world is destroyed, as it was 33 years ago, tomorrow night is the yahrzeit of our baby, our first child, 4-month-old baby died 33 years ago, Shmuel Chaim ben Moshe Halevi. And when he died, it was the whole world, in my opinion, was destroyed. My world was destroyed. And I couldn't see very far. I couldn't see how to move forward. And I felt like Noah in the ark. I was in this ark and the whole world around me was completely chaotic and completely out of control. And I didn't know how to move forward. And I stayed in that ark because the ark on some level felt safe in such an unsafe world. And I'm sure many of us have gone through traumas such as that, where we don't know how to look forward. We don't know how to take the next step. And perhaps the Noah story is teaching us that sometimes there's a time to be in that ark, and sometimes there's a time to open up the doors and to move forward, to take the trauma with us into a new world, into a world with the trauma embedded in us, so that we maybe can grow from that, perhaps, hopefully, maybe, and we're holding a hole in our hearts at the same time, that we have the trauma along with us as we move into a new world. Noah comes out of the ark. He's a kinder person. He's a more compassionate person. He's somebody who's taken care of others for a whole year. He's lived inside this ark while the whole world was being destroyed around him. And he comes out and God says, I'm with you and you can walk with me, and we can look out into the future, into a world that looks different than it did before. And I think this speaks in a very clear way how it is for our experience sometimes to be in a world that seems like it's crashing around all around, and yet we still are alive and we still have a life to live and we still have to keep moving forward. And I guess the challenge is to move forward with, like Noah, with more compassion and with more love and more capacity to give, knowing that the world was destroyed that we had before and that we're moving into a new world. And maybe it's a little bit akin to our COVID experience of being separated from the world for however long we were in our homes, sequestered away, quarantined away, and the world was having its experience that we were fearful of, that it was so many people died and so much changed, and we come out into the new world. And what's the new world look like, and who are we in that new world? And I think it's a challenge for all of us to move into the new world and understand what that is, not the world that we had before. And it's new, and we can have hope for a future, for a good future, a hope filled with openness, to be like Abraham with open tents and open hearts, and that we can move into the new world with chesed, with kindness, and with love.